The Evidence for Development Conference provided a space for government ministers and policymakers to engage with researchers and implementers on bridging the gap between science and policy and enabling data to inform government decision-making.
The question that brings me to Kenya is, how can we optimize the linkage between policy and implementation to make sure that policy is actually being implemented? And the point that I'm trying to emphasize here is that we need political will that says science, technology, and innovation must work for those who have put trust in government. It must be de-eliticized and it should be decolonized.
It starts from the policymakers. As you know, that most of the policies are made in Parliament because the budget is a policy, and also made by cabinet, are also made by ministries, MDAs, and so on and so forth. And in all those stages of decision making, I think what has been lacking is the evidence, data that should support, whatever we're trying to do as a country. Why is data very important? Most Africans that are here, we have got very difficult, our very small fiscal spaces. The resources that we have are not adequate. Therefore, we have to make sure that we are allocating or channels those resources in areas that we think there's going to be high impact. But how do we choose those areas to make sure that then that high impact decision is made? It's data. That is why I think this forum that we are having today is extremely important. It brings together decision makers, it brings together academia and our cooperating partners that normally fund our activities.
The conference is very timely, and it is speaking to the issues that we are actually looking at, our priorities, because now, even especially in the global south, we are really trying to see how we can now embrace research, because that is where the evidence is coming from. Most of the time, we look at the global north to be able to pick some of the research work that has been done in the global north, and then we adapt that to be able to inform policy here in the global south. And many times you'll find that the circumstances are very different. So our policies end up not being, aligned to our situation. But with this conference here, now we are able to look inward and see what do we need to do to ensure that we correct that situation.
We have Agenda 2030, now we have the African Agenda 2063, and with STICE. So I think with the right data, you have evidence for advocacy and policy action. And that's where transformation comes in and sustainable development. So I think that's what I see this conference, when you see research and academia engaging in a very open way and learning from one another and thinking how we work together, around innovation, around invention. There's something that is driven in an African way. You talk about what policies need to be in place to encourage research. We're talking about financing, we're talking about procurement policies, but also we're looking at what has happened over time.
The main issue that we are grappling with is policies that are not responsive to the situation on the ground. So policies that are probably formulated, subjectively, and not taking into account what data is telling us, what science is telling us. And that has led us to have a little bit of difficulty even in being able to achieve our objectives. So in terms of implementing the policies, different stages of stagnation, of course, maybe because some of the policies are not responsive to what we are having on the ground, or because the policies themselves probably need to be made a little bit more to align to what is happening in terms of the health sector.
We must make sure that science and technology is opening up to the youth. At the same time, if it is not made accessible to women, then what we are trying to say is science and technology is absent to 50% of this whole continent. And that has detrimental impacts. Because at the end of the day, the more science, technology, and innovation does not make it to the village, to the rural area, to those who are not accessible to spaces of knowledge, we must understand that we actually are failing to engage with a sector who is the face of poverty. The point that I'm trying to say is that if what we are saying is we are here to do evidence-based development or evidence for development, then we need to engage with majority of the people who are struggling with poverty. And poverty has a face, not only in Africa, it has a face in the whole world. And the face is that of a woman.
So number one, let us make deliberate effort to provide resources towards research so that we can advance science, we can advance technology, we can advance our innovation. There is nowhere we will get if we don't bring in innovative approaches. That is something that we really have to put down on the table. Let us invest, let us be deliberate, let us be intentional in making sure that even if we are not putting in enough, let us keep on increasing so that we move towards what we need to put in, so that we can have evidence base, we can have data that informs our policy decision making.
We have been dependent on the handouts. In other words, we have been dependent on grants, and that has been killing innovation. And to be honest, yes, it comes as a shock, but to me, I think it's a welcome development that now should make our policymakers to wake up, to open our eyes, to see that in the absence of this donor flows that we're getting as grants, what else can we do? And I think that is going to help us to start making sure that we are creating good governance around resource mobilization and the resource use. So to me, it's going to be, in the short term, it's going to be a problem, but in the long term, I think it is going to put us on the right footing.
I think one thing that is worthy to note of this one is there's ownership, of the organizations, research institutes, people who have been involved, agencies, grant agencies, and government. On day one, you had the Minister for Higher Education from Malawi, and myself, we're leading transformation. We're looking at basic and senior secondary education. We're looking at what's happening at the higher education, but also we're looking at research and evidence that will drive development forward. So when you bring policy and action and research together, I think that's the way forward.